Helping us out.
Yeah.
This guy leaving with 31 years of experience.
Thank you.
So you're retiring from our commission?
Yes,
Oh,
trying to retire from everything.
What's your next move?
He just had my baby foot.
Got it.
What's
Trying to
your,
retire from everything.
oh yeah? What's the next move?
Oh, get on a boat and sail to the Caribbean. You open up the borders.
Well, that sounds horrible.
seriously, to the Caribbean? Like through the St. Lawrence? and-
Yep.
Oh my goodness, how fun.
Just that Canadian borders are closed right now. That's our issue.
Probably would be sailing right now anyway. I would hope.
Yes.
Eat.
Christmas is coming next week.
Dinner all day, one time to eat, one time.
Oh, yeah.
Put up.
Oh, okay, she's planning on not making any more, I just wanted to see where my thing is gonna come up here.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm jealous, Ed. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Caribbean's nice, for sure.
It's probably the best, is that a planning commissioner
Too
that
bad
I've
I'm not
seen in
too far
31
down
years.
here.
Yeah, right now.
Thanks.
And after we adjourn, that drops off significantly.
You're part of that, right?
Yeah. I'm a very small part.
Says you.
Trying to
Great.
plunge.
I have 7 o'clock. Let's call this meeting to order. Start over roll call. Commissioner Bushman, last
Present.
call. Commissioner Pickow.
Here.
Trustee Renner.
Here.
Planner Sensky.
Here.
President Lysick here. Clerk Kellner.
Here.
Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
Trustee Howdy-Shell.
Here.
Commissioner Zimbrowski.
Present.
Everybody's here. Move on to item 2, consideration and approval of minutes from November 19th, 2020, regular meeting of the Planning Commission.
Make a motion to dispense with reading.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On the 3rd page, which says trustee Renner down 2/3 of the way down. The Vice Harvester has already stated that they have no plans to build anything soon based on, I think that should just be market conditions.
Last page, item 8. Just given her report, I think there's information in there, so it's like 3 plots.
That's all I saw, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3A, old business, village staff / official review, discussion and status update to the planning commission regarding the Cajun Phase 2 fill project. Property is located at approximately and surrounding South 72 West 23085 National Avenue. It is Zone B3 General Business District. Naomi?
Eric from Public Works, Will and I were out at the site today, actually, and did our monthly inspection. It's getting pretty solid out there. The pond was discharging slightly through the orifice. It looked pretty good, no rills. Let's just hope it looks like this come spring. Will do the follow-up site inspection report and prepare that and get you a copy. He's now gonna take back over the site, as far as inspections with Eric and the MS4 program, so.
Very good.
Yep, he's up for doing that, so I'm
Those are back.
passing it back.
All right, well, thank you very much. I think the village board approved the amended
The plan.
CUG and site plan and all of that last week,
Great.
weeks ago, so
Okay.
we might actually be able to take this off the agenda for a few meetings. Move along, item 3B, review, discussion, consideration / feedback on various sections of the village's zoning code, for example, chapter 16 of the village ordinances, as part of the process intending to result ultimately in a planning commission recommendation for recodification of the chapter in its entirety.
Kicking that to the end.
I was gonna ask if
We
we'd like
get
to.
back and take care of the other meeting.
Very good. Moving along, item 4A, new business, review, discussion, and possible approval of the site plan / plan of operations request of Sarah Soban, doing business as Lavish Lace Photography, to locate her photography studio in Unit B of the multi-tenant building located at West 230, South 8805 Clark Street. The property is Zone B2 Local Service Center District. The property owner is Cars on Clark LLC in care of Brent Shepke.
Right, the property owner name is actually Concepts on Clark. I wrote Cars on Clark in here or on the agenda. But what's being requested, this is a multi-tenant building. The commission has seen and approved various tenant occupancies here over the years. This one is proposed to locate for a photography studio in one of the spaces, approximately 900 square feet in area that she'd be leasing. And what I described in my report is that basically all of the parking stalls are assigned at this point, with the exception of about 3. And those 3, together with the 4 for the office space occupied by Milwaukee Motorsports, which used to be Fox River Recreation, they share those stalls between the 2 office or business type occupancies. And then Milwaukee Motorsports has some parking down in the back as well. So it's a use permitted by right in the B2 zoning district. So I don't raise any issues really with respect to the occupancy. No changes are proposed to the existing site lighting or landscaping. No new dumpsters proposed. Signage will be content placed within the face of the existing freestanding sign out there. There's no size or new structure changes being proposed. The conditions that I would recommend you consider attaching if you're applying for an approval tonight would be the standard review by the building inspector and the safety personnel of the village to confirm that everything that's going on at the site is in accordance with the approved plans and with all of the codes and applicable regulations. One thing I noted is that there was a substantial overflow of parking related to the Milwaukee Motorsports use, well in excess of the spaces allocated for them on the site. So that would be a violation in terms of their approval. And from the commission standpoint, typically what you've said is that, you're on notice now that we recognize that happened as a seasonal, boom. But you're on notice now, and the property owner's on notice that in the future, these will be treated as zoning enforcement issues. And you can expect to have us double back on that if it happens again next year. Condition number 2, that the applicant secure the occupancy and sign permits before they take up that occupancy and place any signage at the site. Condition 3, that the property owner and applicant determine what the number of handicapped stalls is required in support of the use, and make sure that the correct number of stalls are identified as such and striped and signed on the property, working through the building inspections department to make sure that's done. And number 4, that if a refuse container does become necessary at that time, that you have to park it out, you have to place it outdoors, you first have to put a plan for screening in place, have it submitted to the village for staff review and approval, so that it doesn't become an eyesore on the site. So other than that, I think it's a great option.
What type of photography do you all do?
Mostly women's portraits. So portrait photography and then some boudoir photography.
And it's all done on site, or do you go out beyond?
Mostly on site.
So maybe I'm not, I guess not all that familiar with what Milwaukee Motorsports, what they have for parking as compared to what is there. Do you have a little bit more information on that, Mary?
Sure. In your packet, you have a copy of a small site plan.
Yeah, it's kind of,
Very hard to follow.
yeah,
So spaces that are marked with the cross hatch, and they say 1, 2, 3, and 4, those are the spaces where cars on Clark, the business cars on Clark, can park their vehicles for display. Brent, correct me anywhere along the way here if I'm not accurate. And then 5 and 6 are for their use as well, down in the back of the building. So the building falls off back there, where the front door to the lower level is, the overhead door to the lower level. So those 6 stalls are allocated to cars on Clark. And then the 5 stalls in back that are indicated by those black dashed lines, and you see a couple of arrows pointing at them. Those are spaces that have been approved for the storage use of Milwaukee Motorsports. And then the balance of the spaces up above, with the exception of 3, so the balance of spaces that are not marked up are for shared use between this photography studio's space and the office space for the Milwaukee Motorsports occupancy. They are not to be used for parking and storage of materials and equipment that are in for service, or winterizing, or displayed for rent, or anything like that.
so the notice that's occurring for the limits of approval for Milwaukee Motorsports would include, which is what I observed today with the units, the jet skis and such that's up front and lined up kind of along the road that's going back towards the bottom then as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
So that would be flagged, and I've already talked to Mr. Shefty about that, and he understands that the terms of the approval aren't being followed, and so he's gonna be the guy that's gonna get the letter, right? And Milwaukee Motorsports will only get a copy of it. As the property owner, he's responsible to make sure that that tenant is operating in accordance with the terms of the approval.
So with the shared spaces up top for parking between the business office of Milwaukee Motorsports and the proposed photography studio, that's also where the handicap parking spaces would be if owner and occupants come to agreement on that?
Right, so those are 7 existing stalls that are undesignated. One of them is currently marked for handicap use.
One is, okay.
And it would be that, given the cumulative square footage of the office spaces together, that it will trigger an additional stall. And if that happens, it's their responsibility to see that that gets properly striped and posted.
The other question I had was, I think I'm looking at this right, but maybe you can help me out on this too. The office space for Milwaukee Motorsports doesn't have, at least it doesn't appear to have access through to a restroom, except for the restroom that's on the lower level. Is that correct, or is there gonna be shared one common, what looks like one common restroom, women's and men's?
There is the one downstairs that he typically uses. There's also a door that divides the spaces. Currently, it's not locked. There could be flow back and forth, but it is first floor restroom mandatory.
I would prefer to Vince or Jason to answer the question
And
about
that
the
would be considered,
restrooms.
that would be considered legal non-conforming because of the age of the building. You can even, the state statute, state code does allow you to have shared bathroom facilities, not even on site. As long as you're within 300 feet from that building, you can use like someone else's, so. As long as there's accessibility and both, there's accessibility at all times when either one of the tenants are there, use it, it would be allowed.
Yeah, there is, that's real hard to see on that, it's called the middle or upper level. There is a sliding glass door between what I call the long studio space and the office, and it's there. If you look in the middle of the wall, you can see the wall is not complete, but there is a sliding door right there.
To allow access through from Milwaukee Motorsports office to use the men's and women's restroom, it would be on the photography side?
Correct.
Is that going to suffice? I mean, I would assume that you're not really gonna want people coming and going as you're doing some of your shoots and stuff, right?
I mean, I don't know how much Milwaukee Motorsports would need to have access to that bathroom.
Yeah, well, and that's hence my concern. I just saw that was the one and only common restroom that was laid out between the two spaces besides what was just labeled as toilet room down on the lower level. So I just wanted to bring that to point to make sure there was adequate facilities for both tenants and any business, front-facing business that they would be doing.
So,
Well, I think one of the things too is, I mean, they own that, they have occupancy at that lower level where the other bathroom is too.
Right.
So if the studio has access to the men and women's, and maybe it's an overflow for Milwaukee Motorsports when they need it, or, but they also have the one downstairs, so.
Right.
I think that's,
That's just what
I
I was
don't know
trying
that-
to,
yeah,
I'm
I
just
think
trying to
it's-
understand if that was sufficient or not.
yeah,
I think it would be, I mean, they technically both have access to one, and then there's an overflow if Milwaukee Motorsports really needed to from that upper level, otherwise they're going around to the bottom.
As far as the number of occupants, that bathroom, the number of bathrooms would be sufficient for number of occupants there.
Right.
I figured it would be a positive answer to it, just wanted to kind of run by. And the other question I had was about signage. So the existing sign is gonna be modified or rebuilt?
no, just vinyl letters. There's a void right now.
Okay.
Milwaukee's Motors, as the last page shows, Milwaukee Motorsports has the upper one half
Upper left,
or 1/3 of the total signage. And she would be putting vinyl on the other side, and then the lower section would be left for the cars on Clark.
So that wouldn't trigger a separate permit for the signage there?
No new structure, just a change in copy.
And I noticed that there's almost a semi-permanent sandwich board that's out there too. is that going to stay, or is that gonna,
That's part of the Milwaukee Motorsports. You guys tell me what your requirements are for that.
We'd have to go back and see if that was permitted, you know, based on the amount of square footage of signage they're allowed.
yeah,
Yeah, they may be allowed a temporary sign of that type, but the specific limitations, I'll have to look up and
okay.
That's
let them know.
all
and-
Paul.
It's not, but that's not just out there occasionally, that's
Yeah,
out there.
it's semi-permanent, so it's always out there. Yeah, I've seen
So,
it.
so you'll get back to me on that?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's obviously nothing to do with the studio, but it's a concern with the other signage.
I just noticed one of Mary's concerns here, number 2, is applicant to secure occupancy and sign permits is necessary, so that's the reason, hence the reason I was asking about the sign. That's all the questions I have.
I'll make a motion to approve the plan of operation for Lavish Lace Photography.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
that's subject to the conditions of the.
Yes.
Recommendations of the plan?
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you, you too.
Good luck.
Welcome to Big Bend.
Thank you.
Item 4B, review, discussion, and feedback to the village's Public Safety Committee and/or the village staff on a matter of installing a street light at the intersection of Ripplebrook Court and Henneberry Avenue.
I think the report's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, the Public Safety Committee was approached, I think, by a property owner or owners in the Ripplebrook West subdivision, asking about installation of a street light at the corner where the court meets Henneberry Avenue. And the Public Safety Committee bumped it up to Planning Commission for some review, discussion, and feedback, because they don't know the entire background on it. The village code does have a specific provision, the land division ordinance has a specific provision that says that streetlights, money must be deposited with the village to cover the cost of installing streetlights at the intersections of main streets and arterial ways, which Henneberry would be, and any other principal intersections within the subdivision that the village feels they're needed at. So in this particular case, that didn't happen. The plat was recorded in 2006. There's some evidence about a letter that went out from ATI asking for the installation of the street light back in 2008. And another letter went out sometime in 2009 from the engineers at ATI asking for installation of the light. And then it all just seems to have gone quiet. So we reviewed at staff level the existence of a development agreement. There is one out there. It doesn't call for the installation of the street light. We don't have any funds deposited from back when the plat was recorded. So I talked to the developer himself, Steve Stanza, and asked him what his recollection of this is, and he said, you know, they seem to because the development wasn't progressing, these homes weren't building out there, everything seemed to go quiet on the idea of putting a street light in. And instead of that, he provided street yard lights to each one of the property owners to put into the front yards, and thinking that would suffice. So that's kind of the entire piece of information I have to share with the commission. And we're looking for your discussion and recollections and any guidance that you want to give back. The superintendent of public works, in talking with him, doesn't seem to favor the installation of a street light. I think it may be principally because of the cost associated with it and maybe the questionable willingness of property owners to incur an assessment to that extent. All of that I'll give to you to discuss and That's it.
So there was no money encumbered to do it, but there was supposed to be, but they just didn't do it, or?
Well, there is a provision in the code that it should have been deposited.
Okay.
It never was, and yet a couple of years later, the village went back asking for it.
Are they required to deposit the entire amount, or just a percentage of what it would cost to install the light?
It doesn't provide an exception in terms of, some reduced amount, so you would imagine it would be the going rate for the installation at that time.
Do we know how much it's gonna, I mean, I know we're gonna probably have more discussion on it, but do we have an estimated cost? I was reading some of the letters, it's pretty interesting. You know, there's some people are really against it, and then you've got some people, obviously, younger kids, you know.
Well, what I found interesting is that traditionally, just having a light in your front yard doesn't offset the requirement for an intersection to have a street light. So that's why, while I understand and appreciate the fact that he did put the lights in the front, for example, my subdivision, we have lights in our front of our yards, but when there's an intersection or a crosspath, you're gonna have a street light for safety reasons. And that's why, yeah, that's why I'm kinda surprised. I don't know that that offsets it by the fact that they have their own independent, light lamp posts in their front yard.
Yeah.
There was some concern that, there is an occasion that kids are sitting out there waiting for a bus. Whether it's short or not, doesn't matter, they're still sitting out there, right?
Yep.
And that's where my concern comes in, as far as it is dark, especially when it's this time of year.
Right.
When the bus is picking up, my daughter gets on a bus at 6:35 this morning, guess what, it is still very dark.
Both of my kids are the same. It's dark out there for sure, so.
That area has got some traffic pattern to it, so that's where my safety concern is for the kids, for me, the bus pickup and not so much drop off, but sometimes I drop off too, it can be dark, depending on the time of year, how long the bus route is. Ultimately, it seems like, based on the documentation, it should have been installed, and that's why, okay, we're talking about it now because it wasn't,
Right.
but in reality, it should be
on
there.
the radar somehow.
If this would have fallen the right path, it would already be there
Right.
before they even built.
According to Eric, it's about $7,000
Okay.
to put one in.
Minimum.
Some of that
So
cost.
what's, so what's $7,000 to a safety factor, a kid or somebody getting hurt?
Well,
Yeah.
again, I kind of go back to the fact that it should have been in the first place.
It should have been in the first
Before the
place.
houses even got built.
Should have been done in the
Part of
90s.
agreement.
But it's not needed now.
That's it.
I live on the corner. by
That's
the
an
way.
opinion, right?
Yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay.
I live right on the corner, I've been watching for 3 weeks.
Sure.
And these kids walk up from the dead end, all from one house, 3 kids.
Yep.
They walk up, and I'm amazed, because I thought kids wait 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes sometimes for a bus. These kids walk up the street. I watch them right through the window for the last 3 weeks since the safety meeting. I've been watching every day. They walk up, and they don't go on to Henneberry, which, by the way, I saw 1 car in 3 weeks, anywhere near the time that those kids were there. That is not a busy street at 6:20 in the morning. They do not stand on Henneberry, they stand on Ripplebrook. And so if they're gonna get hit standing on Ripplebrook, then they're probably gonna get hit walking from the dead end, so maybe they should have streetlights all the way down. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and if you go down, when you leave here, go down the hill, the last streetlight on 164 here is right by the Mill Pond. Therefore, the intersection of 164 and Henneberry doesn't justify having a streetlight, so why would the little intersection by Ripplebrook? And those kids in 3 weeks, the longest they ever waited there was 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And the average is closer to 45 seconds. I'm amazed. They've got it down to a science. I see them come out of their house, they walk down, honestly, as soon as they get to
as
the,
their mother, those 3 kids?
as soon as they
It's
get to
because
that
I don't want them
intersection, I thought I was
waiting on the
talking, I'm
corner,
sorry.
So I
Go
send
ahead.
them out to the bus right when it has to be, so. And
I know, it's perfect timing. Like I said, they're average of 45 seconds, and this morning they weren't there 15 seconds, because as soon as they get there, still on Ripplebrook, they're not out in the middle of Henneberry. I see the bus come down, past the Mill Pond, past Stash, turn, pick them up, and I'm like, damn, I can't believe it. I thought kids were out there for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And we all have our, well, 3 houses haven't put their lamps out in the front yet, but like you said, it's not the same as a street light, but if you don't need a street light on 164 in Henneberry, why in the heck would you need one on Little Ripplebrook? It makes no sense to me.
It's because of the
And we're
development. It's because of the development, right? At the time, there wasn't a requirement to put one at that other intersection because it's how old? How old is that intersection?
Right, well, if you can collect from
Once the
Stiza, then I
density
guess
around it.
that's what you're gonna do. If you can collect from Stiza, that's what you're gonna do. But I know Warren in the latest regime here, got into office to try to lower taxes, and you're doing a good job, Warren. But, you and the rest of the people.
No, I mean,
But, mine are still $6,000 a year, by the way.
We need to
yeah.
keep the commission.
Ultimately,
informed on this.
good discussion, we appreciate the feedback.
Did you get my letter?
We have
We have
tons
all
of
the
letters in front
letters,
of us,
right.
yeah.
Okay, 'cause I brought a copy if you didn't.
No, we got quite a few of them.
Because I don't want that light shining in my street, my windows up all night long, and school's 180 days, and even less, because now you said it's dark at 6:35. The 21st is coming up, and within a couple of weeks, it's gonna be light at 6:20.
Did we check with the lawyer, the attorney, to see if we had grounds to be able to go back at development for this cost?
We did.
Yeah, we did, and the attorney feels that, it was recorded in 2006. This many years later, it's too far back to reach and ask that he abide by that rule that was in the land division ordinance at the time, but was never properly invoked. Also because it's not in the development agreement.
2008, 2009,
Pardon me?
letters in 2008, 2009 that were sent to him,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's still too far.
his feeling is that it's too far to reach, to go back now, together with the fact that it's not a requirement in the development agreement.
Is there a liability to the village if someone gets hurt there and we're supposed to have a street light there?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm just saying, if, like what Kelly's saying, if it was supposed to be there and we have documents on file that it should be there and.
Requesting that it be put in,
Right, and I mean,
following through.
my only thing is, I did read all the letters. I read all the letters, and I could say that there was just the one letter that struck me a little bit was, someone said they were driving there and they were actually startled when they came up on the kids, because they kinda came out of nowhere in the dark. I don't know if you guys have read that same one, and I understand what you're saying, well, they're only out there for 2 minutes and 15 seconds on average.
My other problem is they come walking down the street, down Ripplebrook from the end, wouldn't they at least have a flashlight if they're worried about being in the dark? They wear dark clothes, they don't have anything reflective, they can't even carry a little $2 flashlight. And like I said, the person that you're talking about that must have been startled by him had to be coming up Ripplebrook. Well, he could knock them off anywhere from the end, walking to the other end. So, again, this is, the kids, the big thing is they're on Ripplebrook, they're not on Henneberry. And I saw one car in 3 weeks, anywhere near 6:20 in the morning.
Right, that's not part of.
That's
the
just my
development
argument.
agreement. That's an ordinance, he was supposed to do it.
Right, but the village never followed through.
And now that it's not done, I mean, who's got $7,000 in their pocket?
We should have ultimately sent them a letter.
How many houses are in this area?
8.
There's 9.
Well, the 9th is over on
technically
Henneberry.
9. Ripplebrook West is 9 houses.
Right, but there's 8 on this cul-de-sac, and then there's one closer to 164.
So I got a question, maybe the homeowners can answer this for me. I'm reading this through, and if I'm looking at this right, the Mosquito School, it's in the Mosquito School District?
No, we're in McWanago.
Okay, somebody had put down Mosquito School District.
I think that was my wife.
At any rate, so McWanago School District, there's one bus that goes down and basically makes the lap, turns around at the cul-de-sac at the end and comes back up. Is that
Yep,
correct?
8 o'clock pickup.
That's
And then the other one-
that's
Elementary.
the Big Bend Elementary School.
That's Big Bend
bus.
Elementary School, which is part of the McWanago School District. But the one for the middle school and high school only picks up at the end of Ripplebrook.
Correct.
Have you reached out to the bus company to ask why?
Yes, and I don't have the names on hand, I think from the last meeting, which I didn't get to attend, all the names were there, but, I spoke to the bus company, and he kinda just laughed and said, you know how many calls we get about this all the time? He said, if I do it for you, then I have to do it for everyone. So then I reached out to the, district something in the school districts, and he stated that it's merely impossible to change it, and he said, yes, it's a huge concern of ours, but there's just nothing we can do. And I said, well, why sometimes would they come down and sometimes they won't? Because sometimes they will, but it depends on which way they're coming. So if they're picking the kids up in the morning, they'll go straight because they have kids west or east of us that need to be picked up, so they can't turn around in the cul-de-sac. But sometimes on drop off, he will, but that's on the bus driver, it's not on the company. I don't even know if they know that he does that sometimes. So,
I've witnessed the
They
same
were
thing with
not-
my daughter in my subdivision. You know, drop-offs, it seems like he's got a little bit more flexibility because he's not on a time crunch as much.
right,
And
right,
he comes from a different direction.
Yep.
So there is potentially a different drop point on that road. So like you said, I think that's at the discretion of the driver, not necessarily the bus
Right.
company.
Cause and I'm part of the public safety committee, I was here for that as well, so part of the concern that we discussed was the fact that it's 45 miles an hour on Hinnenberry.
And very, yeah,
And,
that's definitely a big risk. Although lower
there's no-
traffic.
well, yeah, exactly, so that's part of it, so the immediate thought that I had was, bus companies, they have one bus that's going down to the end of the cul-de-sac, why don't they have the other bus running at two? The buses should be taking the same route, but it doesn't eliminate all the discussion about a light at the head of the road, the intersection, but at least from a safety standpoint, that's, to me, this easy solution to try to rectify it. Don't have the kids out on a 45 mile an hour zoned road without proper lighting on it or proper traffic control.
They're not out on that 45 mile an hour road, they're
So-
on Ripplebrook.
Yeah, right, so, the other thing that we discussed during, public safety, we went around and, talked to the police chief as well, he's not here tonight, but he did express that, he didn't have, high concerns about, any public safety issues involved with that, there was nothing, no historical data to go on, no incidences in the past. He did state that there was no, immediate concerns of his with the way it is, so. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's the,
I left that safety meeting, it looked pretty unanimous that nobody saw a safety issue. That was what I got out of that meeting.
The only thing that I don't think we talked about it a little bit in the last meeting was, putting that back, is it a village, is it a STIZA expense, or is it our expense as homeowners in Ripplebrook West? Because I think that's a different conversation when you start putting $7,000 on the table. So I don't know if you guys have more clarity on that.
On who would be responsible if a streetlight were to be put in?
Correct.
Yeah. My feeling at this time is that it was a requirement, the village did follow up and ask for it to be installed, a couple of times in subsequent years. We'd have to ask the village attorney's opinion specifically about the question, when the village dropped it that many years ago, is it in fact too far to reach back and resurrect that request? And if the answer is yes, it's too far back, it would be a village expense. And the village may or may not decide that that would be something that would be a special assessment upon the owners of the property that benefit from its installation.
what about on the new development that's going in? I mean, does anyone have clarification on that? Like, is that written in that one? Because talk about traffic, so that's gonna add more traffic. How many homes are going in there? These kids are gonna be going on the bus as well. So, you're probably gonna meet that again if it's a situation.
Yeah.
So,
You sure hope that it's gonna be in the development agreement this
Yeah.
time around, that development never reached the point of
Right.
having a development agreement prepared.
and then you guys talked about lampposts, but he didn't finish all the lampposts, mine being one. There were 3 homes, I think yours is one.
I have ours.
We guys all have
He
ours.
he so nicely dropped it off in my front porch. He did, but
Well, that's the homeowner's expense to put it in. I
Yeah,
put
it
mine in,
was-
everybody else had to put theirs
It was
in.
part
It's only
of
3 houses that don't have them in
buying
yet.
the land. So it was part of buying the land.
sure, so the builder should have.
The builder should have.
Buyer's agreement.
So I think our first move here is to question the attorney specifically over this, I'm gonna say the January 21st, 2009 letter that specifically cites the village code 14.0911 and requiring a street lamp there. And what recourse do we have with respect to this letter and the developer?
And I assume then, when you send it back, you're going to then send it back to public safety, and and give them the advice that if the attorney says that we can go back and make that reach and make that request to the developer, that we would recommend that be done and that the light be installed. Is that a consensus among this group? Or do you just want to know the answer from the attorney first before you decide whether the light would be installed?
When was the first house built in that
2016.
2016? That's only 4 years ago. And the last house just went up.
It was completed and the guy moved in June of 2020.
Was the final lift of asphalt put in there then?
I think that was just done.
I think that was done this summer.
That was just done this summer too, so I guess from a standpoint of timing, I think, you know, rather than going back to the day that agreement was signed, the development really didn't start and wasn't really completed until just now. That you're still in that time frame.
That's a good point.
And the person who started the development in '06 is the current person that finished the development
Correct, he's the
recently?
developer, yep.
And he's got a phase 2, you know, on the table.
Sure.
I think your timing doesn't really matter so much as when the last house was done as to when he sold the last lot. Because once he sold the last lot, he was done. Whether they built right away or not, doesn't matter.
No, because he had to still put in the final lift of asphalt in order for the subdivision to be finally approved.
Yeah, Mary, I talked to her quite a couple times on the phone, I talked to Warren a couple times about that, that was quite a battle getting that done, the way I understand it. So, I mean, you're gonna battle over a streetlight we don't need, I guess, you know, that's, I mean, this thing burns 365 days a year, you pay the electric bill for what? For how long is it dark, for 30 days a year? If you know, this seems ridiculous. And none of us that bought there knew there was gonna be a street light up there. It should have been up there already if it was going to be. And then maybe I wouldn't have bought on the corner and have a street light shining in my house all night.
Well, I agree with you. We do have a letter citing village ordinance saying that there needs to be one there.
But there does need to be one on 164. And what about every other bus stop that has a kid?
It's not because of the bus stop, it's because of the development.
Okay.
That's the way the ordinance read back then. And
That's the ordinance or that's the agreement between the
No.
developer?
No, it was a village ordinance in 2009.
Yes, it was.
And it still is an ordinance?
Still in there.
Okay, so any side street's gotta have a street light from now on.
Any intersection
That's a lot
that
of
connects to
streetlights.
an arterial street on a new subdivision and any intersections that the village feels within the subdivision warrant a street light.
Yeah, that's the key, is that it has a development around it. You can't just go now looking at every corner that doesn't have one and say there needs to be one. There has to be a new development with this enforcement of this ordinance. That's where it comes into play.
Well, hopefully you don't get the okay to do it. That's just my opinion.
But, yeah, so we'll check with the attorney, and now does the planning commission want me to report back with the attorney's findings here, or do we want to kick it back down to public safety?
I think we've already heard from safety, you know, realistically, it sounds like they didn't necessarily see it as a safety problem. This is more of an enforcement of a ordinance and development issue, which is appropriate for planning.
Right.
Which is the reason, one of the reasons we
Yeah.
picked it.
Right.
So I think it has to come back here.
Okay, so we should table this until we get an answer from the
I think we
attorney.
need to know what our options are related to going back after Stiza, the developer.
Doable.
Okay, well, if that's it, then I just have another question. So when's the next meeting I need to be at? So we're not, the meeting on the 7th, the total village board is not gonna have anything to do with this light now. Now we're gonna go to, what'd you say, the 21st of January?
Is that the next planning commission meeting,
I
21st?
thought I heard you say that earlier. So 7 o'clock, 21st of January. All right, I'll be back here again then.
28th.
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 Okay.
28th.
28th at 7 PM.
Okay, all right, I'll be back on the 28th then, I guess.
We will have a public safety meeting before that, but we won't bring this back up at that.
Right, okay, that's why I skipped that, 'cause I thought I heard that you weren't gonna do another,
Right.
I mean, that seemed pretty unanimous, I was here for that one. So now I'll be back on the 28th at 7 o'clock.
Will that day establish if there would be a special assessment?
No, that wouldn't be established by the planning commission, that would be established by the village board at probably the February meeting.
So we have to stay tuned for months of meetings for this. Is there a way for to be informed about this from a subdivision perspective?
via email or sure?
Yeah.
I believe everybody had an email address on these letters, right? I think.
I didn't write a letter, so.
Well, you know what's going on. Is there anybody in the subdivision that wants to pay for this light? 8 houses, anybody? You wanna pay for it?
I would pitch in for
You
sure.
pitch in 1/8 of a minimum $7,000 light?
I mean,
I can do math
that
pretty
would
good. Let's
save-
just round it
that would
off
save
to
a couple of
$1,000.
lights. What's $1,000?
Well, if you're gonna save lives, why don't you put your lamp post in and everybody
I'm not
else, and then
arguing
you
with
can
you
see
in
I'm
front of
go walking
these
down the road.
We appreciate the comments, but we don't need to go that far.
I'm trying to actually get somebody to do it.
Yeah. Let us see what we can figure out with the attorney and we'll go from there. We can push it back on the developer based on the ordinance and the original agreement. Then
Can I have a motion?
I will make a motion to table this.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Alright, see you guys on the 28th.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Tony, David, you second?
Yes.
We're gonna be here.
I think we can call for reports quick and then circle back to chapter 16. So we'll move on to item 5, planners report for November, December 2020. Mary?
Harvest View subdividers agreement extension was granted by the village board for 2 years. The extreme exterior is CSM. In fact, I just talked to Greg Peterson again today. He still isn't prepared to go to their attorneys and have anything redrafted at this point that says this easement is now not just for the benefit of lot 2 that used to be there, it's now for the benefit of this whole new lot that we've created. I did mention to him a conversation that Naomi and I had, which took place in the context of reviewing the concept plans for the full development of that lot, that new lot for the storage warehouse use. And there is a concern if that's going to be the only entry-exit point for that whole development. Naomi pointed out that it's going to have to be built as a private street, which means the cross-section has to be nearly the same as a village street, except to the extent the planning commission might be willing to waive or modify some of those conditions, for instance, width of shoulder. Regardless, that drive access point is going to be right up against the garage of the house that sits on this lot where the access easement cuts next to. So I pointed that out to Greg and I told him that I think they're planning to submit their plans in time for the January meeting, and I told them we would convene a staff meeting to go over all the details of those plans as soon as they submit, and we'll address that issue. But in the meantime, the CSM can't be recorded because that easement issue is not settled. Right now, that lot doesn't have unfettered access via that easement. Only the lot 2 portion of it does.
What about the possibility of them doing that second entrance/exit off of Edgewood?
I mentioned that to Greg today, and I said, that I think that might be your most important relief valve, and he did not seem unwilling to consider that. So
I just, as far as that other option, if there is only the one means, you can up that. They had already brought that up originally, the possibility, so if that's still feasible, maybe that's the better scenario.
Feasibility for what?
Having a second entrance and out or exit of that development. So the original proposed concept showed just off of 164 across from the school.
Yeah.
But obviously that land connects and has a pass-through of where the dump site is, and there's that entrance off of Edgewood,
Sure.
and that could be a second means of entry and exit.
We're also going to have to address the environmental concerns before we can address anything with the road getting put on top of that area.
right,
I mean, there's a lot of steps to be.
there are.
Yep, I'm
There
agree.
are.
But I agree, we did discuss that way back when, as a secondary option for a second entrance exit way.
Naomi also pointed out that 30-foot wide easement where they would like, as it's proposed right now, all of the traffic in and out of the subdivision to in and out of the development to go through, that depending on what that traffic count looks like, the DOT might not love that being the access point in terms of how many feet away from a signalized intersection are you on 164. And what if they say your access point's gonna have to be further north? Fortunately for them, they own that lot. Extreme Exteriors,
The
Peterson's
rental property.
own that
I would
lot.
presume there might be some concern about the school being right at the elementary school across from it as well.
I believe there's a median there, so the traffic. Well, there's, but there,
A
is
straight
there a
median.
left turn?
It's straight, it's a straight
Turn
turn,
lane with no median.
yeah.
There is a left turn.
Yeah.
out of
Yeah,
that.
you're gonna go turn there.
Okay. Yeah, so it really is gonna have to take a scrutinized review by Naomi to determine where that access point can happen, depending on what the anticipated traffic numbers are gonna be in and out of it.
There was some kind of questions we had on the site plan that was provided for initial review, that the easement as drawn showed it right up next to the house, but then in some documentation that we were looking at the county website, it showed the house a little bit off the easement. So how was that house placed on the drawings? Was it per survey? We asked for some additional survey information to kind of get a better idea of what that egress area looked like. And then brought up that this is gonna be, a discussion that's gonna have to take place. How is this traffic movement gonna go in and out, and then in relation to the striping of the turn lane? And is, DOT gonna be okay with that location? So that's been brought up a couple times now. First in our original meeting, when we kind of looked at the concept, and then now in writing with my first review of the site plan.
So the CSM is on hold.
CSM is sitting here, waiting for that easement issue to be resolved. Update regarding modifications to chapter 13, construction site erosion control. We haven't heard anything there.
Got an email from Samantha late last week apologizing she hadn't even started to look at it yet. So we're at least another month off before we even get a DNR review on that.
Hastings project, we had been asked to schedule a meeting to just sit down and discuss kind of what's going on in their world and ours as far as getting that project online, and the meeting was canceled by them, and we don't really have any sort of an update since. So we're all kind of waiting and hoping that nothing has changed or come up.
Do we know if the real estate transaction has occurred?
Don't
don't
believe
know.
so. The last I had heard from Dan was they were gonna wait to close on the property until after the election.
What I heard as well.
And here we are.
We still haven't finished the election.
Right, exactly, here we are.
Lord,
That's who you talk to.
Lord of mercy, yeah.
Right. So we'll just keep our ears to the track on that.
What's last, so you got
I'll
a
give
name
you-
and put a.
The last we talked to Dan, he was out of town for an extended hunt, and I'll give him a shout next week. Just, wish him Merry Christmas.
Use an opportunity.
Right.
Okay.
Update regarding the status of Joy Lane. A letter was sent out to the property owners. I forget if it was an email or a letter from the village
I
president.
saw a copy of it, yeah. I saw it. Or maybe that was in the minutes from last,
I think it was last month.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really essentially advising them of the facts of the matter, which is that Joy Bartel owns that piece of real estate on which the private road sits, the private driveway sits. That the owners want to work together to try and acquire that from Spartel or her estate. I don't know about her existence. I don't know if she's alive or not, and if she has, somebody in succession that would take care of that for her. And they would have to work with the village to ensure that the condition of the road is evaluated and brought up to an acceptable condition for a public street, and request that it be dedicated once that's done. So the ball is really back in the property owners.
Have we had any feedback from that letter?
I haven't seen
I
it.
got an email from one of the residents over there requesting every planning commission member, commissioners, contact information, all of the village board contact information going all the way back to 1998.
Wow.
And I sent that off to her.
And yeah, I don't know what she's gonna do with that information. She's looking to find some commitment out of somebody that's not there. But, I told her, I said, we have no record of it. The county doesn't, the state doesn't. I can't go any farther than that. That's all we've heard. Anything else?
That's it on my end for reports.
Excellent. Fire inspector's report. Bill?
Everything is going real good up there, that I know of, and, I have no other report.
What do you got going on tomorrow?
What do I got going? Oh, I got the blood drive. That doesn't go on fire inspection. Blood drive tomorrow over here.
That's something important. Come on.
Where's the blood?
Any questions of me? Or anybody have anything?
Which one?
At the Lions.
Lions Club?
Nothing? Okay.
All right.
That must be interesting these times.
Thanks, Bill.
welcome.
Item 7, building inspector's report.
Pretty quiet. Only thing that we had was, Naomi reached out to me about possible soil erosion violation with, right off of Edgewood, who owns?
Yeah, Extreme Exteriors.
Oh, that's Extreme. Okay, he cleaned that up. Best that I've ever seen it look, and we just wanted to make sure he wasn't prepping for something because like we talked about, we're still a long time away from putting a shovel in the ground. So there's, from what I could tell, you visited the site also.
I just looked at it today.
Today, so I didn't see any issues. There's vegetation around it, even if we got torrential rains or whatever, everything would contain in that area with what's there. That's pretty much it.
What property is this?
The old dump site,
The old dump site?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
where the
If you-
trees were removed and stuff?
Yeah.
trees were
It used to
removed.
be gravel. I always remember seeing like gravel piles, and they kind of, I think, used it as cleanup off of their trucks or something like that.
Have they excavated down in?
No,
No, just kind of
No.
cleaned up the piles and stuff. So I
Oh,
didn't.
oh.
So that to me, it just looked like a cleanup. It didn't look like anybody is staking anything out or anything. So
yeah, we just let them know that clearing and grubbing was considered a development activity, and if he was gonna do that for more than 3,000 square feet, he needed an erosion control permit through the village.
Oh, okay.
And he assured me that what had been done is all he's gonna do. There were no plans to go any further, and I went and looked today, and it's okay. It's not an issue
Yeah,
from
it was
erosion control.
it was activity over the first weekend of deer hunting, right before Thanksgiving. That's when that started. It
Oh,
was
okay.
just those 2 days over a weekend, and there was a family friend that thought they were doing him a
Yes,
favor.
yes, that's what he told me too, yeah. So, I mean, he responded right away. I said, okay, thanks for the update, just wanted to be clear. And I was actually, I asked Jason to go because I was under quarantine then, so I did stop out there today, and I agree, Jason,
Yeah.
it's nothing.
It raised an alarm for us over at Lake Park, because we could see it. We
Mm,
saw it
oh,
happening.
yes,
So everybody's like,
yeah.
what's going on over there? So
Right.
That's
Yeah.
how I know, is he drafted a letter and sent it to the
Oh,
subdivision,
okay.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah, that landfill site, yeah, okay. I didn't know that you guys had inspected, but it's good that there wasn't any excavation
No.
down into it. It's
just clean up.
highly contaminated soils down underneath.
yeah, no, there was nothing like that. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it? Go ahead.
Engineers report. Naomi?
So, yep, I took a look at the site plan for the Big Bench storage, gave some initial comments regarding their site plan. I think their biggest issue is gonna be the access road, egress road up 164. The other thing I wanted to follow up with is Douglas Court. As our last plan commission meeting, they had done some work on the ditches, stabilized the ditches. On the one side of the road, the side of the road adjacent to the wetland, we asked them not to touch. I was just out there today. It looks like everything is holding up from an erosion standpoint. It looks pretty good out there as far as the work that they did complete. The shouldering is not completed. We would not recommend acceptance of the roads as public roads right now. So Public Works is going through another year of Paisley rating, and they'll have to not include that on their list because it's not been accepted. And so they can't get funding for that road for any snow removal. However, and I did get a call, or our last meeting, I had gotten a revised stormwater plan for the pond modifications that are required. I had gotten a call from Paul Van Hinkelum, the developer's engineer, on November 25th, asking if they were ready to start construction on the pond. And I returned his call because that pond modification has to go back to the DNR for an NOI, revised NOI. And I had several concerns, including what I think I mentioned that night at the Plan Commission, was that I didn't have any spot elevations on the lot, the details of the lot adjacent to where the pond is going to go, which I specifically asked for from Cardinal Engineering. So I reiterated that concern to Cardinal Engineering. He said, well, it's a private lot. We need permission to access the lot. So Mr. Blazik, I had his email. So the same day I emailed the property owner and I said, we're working on getting this information so that we can look at, compare it with the new pond design. Would you be amenable to Cardinal Engineering coming out? It would take a half a day at best to gather this information. I spelled out the information that we needed for the survey, and he agreed the same day. I talked to Ryan Cardinal after the weekend on December 1st. I also at Cardinal Engineering and related the concerns that I had talked with Paul Van Hinkelum, his partner, on. At that time, they had not reached out and set up a time to go do the survey on the private lot to get the information that's required for the pond modifications. I also had some concerns about the design of the pond and the information that was presented in the stormwater report that I shared with him. A few days later, on December 4th, I put those comments in writing to Cardinal Engineering, and the developer, which was copied. Yep, developer was copied, Cardinal Engineering, building inspector, Mary, were all on a copy of my comments related to the modified pond design. That was December 4th, and I have not heard anything since.
Did you ever get the timeline commitment from them? Because that was the other thing that you were waiting on too, right?
Right. Never got the timeline commitment.
Do you have any conversations recently with Mike on this?
I received an email from him today, from him and Robin, complaining about the large bill they just received from the village.
Related to the engineering efforts and stuff?
Yes.
Bill would be smaller if it were done right from the beginning.
Eight now.
So they wanted to proceed, but they hadn't got the proper permission from either the village or the state to proceed, is that?
DNR.
That's how they,
DNR, yeah.
yeah. They said, can we start building the pond? And I said, Paul, you guys didn't address my comments in my review letter, and I went over them. Well, we can't, you know, we couldn't go on the property because it was a private property. I said, I can set that up for you. And I did it, you know, in 10 minutes, they had permission.
They obviously could too, you know.
Oh, absolutely, they could. And then I said, I asked for calculations on how this is gonna impact the wetland, because we're allowing them to store water in the wetland. You didn't give me any of that information. He goes, I don't know where the wetland drains to. I said, I know there's county contour
They
information
haven't
that.
done any wetland delineation on that?
No, they have a wetland delineation, but the drainage outside the area, so they have a wetland delineation on their part of the property that shows the boundary of the wetland.
Okay.
But if we're putting water into the wetland, that if it rises, where does it drain?
Does it overflow?
Where does it overflow? And I said, oh, I know there's county contour information that will tell you that.
Yeah.
It's available to he knows this, he knows this.
Yeah, it's an engineering firm, come on.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, I said, you know, and he goes, well, and I said, also, I said in my letter, you have to get an NOI revision through the DNR for this. We're gonna go through the process, the whole thing. And he said, well, I don't know if the DNR is gonna approve it. I said, then you can't do it.
You definitely can't
I
start it.
So I don't, you know,
Oh, my head hurts.
Some places might use them.
Anything else? Come on.
I was holding back. I was trying not to show my
Let's
frustration.
go back to occasion.
So, I mean, or not, the improvements that's been done to the ditches, is that going to affect flow that's going to accumulate into the wetland that would affect anything to the adjacent house before
It's-
springtime?
The ditch work is gonna make things better, cause now it's gonna be stabilized and, well, it should become stabilized. Before it was just kind of rough graded, weeds growing. There was some erosion cause it wasn't properly graded. So the ditch work will make things better. It's not being treated per ordinance before it goes into the wetland, which this pond will do. The house right now is lot one is having no impacts right now, but we have to get a pond in there.
Right.
And we just wanna make sure that pond doesn't adversely impact. Or if we put the pond in and they have to move their downspout drain, then we know that ahead of time, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing we're trying to minimize.
Right. I get it. I'm just more concerned with what little bit of flow change that would happen, either positive or negative, with the ditches being realigned, if that's gonna affect water
No.
flooding or anything that would affect that.
You're not gonna notice anything that way.
Is lot one on the west side of that or the east side of the Douglas Court? Are you talking?
It's on the east side. The
East
last one on the east side, right before there's a big open area.
Yeah.
Part of it's wetland, but actually the right up next to his lot,
Mhm.
that's where the ponds are supposed to go. It looks like wetland because it's got tall grasses or whatever, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's where the pond is supposed to be.
Okay.
But where they put the house, there's basically a walkout.
That's with the swimming pool.
Facing that direction.
Facing
No, to the
the-
left.
No,
You're
the
thinking
other
to the
one.
right.
Other side.
Other
You're
side,
the other side.
across from the swimming pool.
Okay, now I know what you're
Left
talking
side, the
about.
low lying area on the left side there.
Okay.
Yeah.
The people like the people at the swimming pool are good friends of ours.
Oh, yeah, they're
So-
nice. They come out and talk.
Yeah.
So.
Some sweet rock work.
They
Oh.
did have, they were nice.
They spent mint on that out there.
Mm,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sweet.
yeah.
I'm impressed every time I see it.
I told him if he didn't stack those outcropping rocks soon, I was gonna come over and start taking them.
Take a couple.
They're good people.
Did the developer or the engineering firm give us any answers as to when the shoulders will be done and the one damaged spot on the road?
I think that goes back to the timeline, right? We talked about this last month. One of the things that she was still had outstanding with them is she wanted the timeline of the finished items.
Yeah.
What's
No.
left open, what's their timeline to finish?
No
We
problem.
need to push back on them and get that timeline. Outside of the DNR, NOI thing, because they don't control that timeline.
Yeah,
DNR
right,
does.
right,
But
right.
outside of that, these other items, we need something written down.
So now the shouldering work will have to wait till
Sure,
spring,
till spring.
and the asphalt work. But let's get a timeline. When are you gonna start? And then we gotta hold on to it.
Yep.
What does the acronym NOI mean?
Notice of intent?
Oh, okay, okay.
Anything else?
But they have to still make that application with the DNR, so that should be part of their timeline too.
That should be, yeah, they should, that's right, they should include all the work on their timeline, it's an estimated, we realize that, but I mean,
And they better give the DNR ample time to come back with that, with the other issues with the DNR, it's taking a while for them to
yeah.
Yes.
Respond.
yeah. Multitude of different levels.
Anybody have any questions for any of the staff? Very good. Thank you all. We'll circle back to item 3B now.
There's no correspondence, right? Next page.
None that, well, none that we haven't gone
All right,
over.
fair enough.
Thanks. Item 3B, review, discussion, consideration, feedback on various sections of the zoning code, for example, chapter 16 of the village ordinances. Part of the process intended to result ultimately in a planning commission recommendation for recodification of the chapter in its entirety.
We left off last month. A couple of the commissioners had a chance to present their questions and concerns with some of the text. And building inspector participated extensively in the conversation. I attempted to summarize all of the changes. They're highlighted in green in the copy that you were emailed late last week or early this week. And so I guess my feeling is we would resume doing that exact same thing, looking for specific review, comments, questions about the code. The building inspections department did contact me today to talk about a couple of questions that are germane. I guess just one question. The requirement for a setback from conservancy areas, anything that's identified as a wetland, floodplain, an environmental corridor, anything of that sort. And we've never had that in our code. And I remembered, Vince, that this came up when Steve Atkins did his project over off of Big Bend Drive. And the question was raised, how can we simply say, you can go right up to, but not into the environmental area? And so at that time, we just administratively at staff level invoked a 10-foot offset.
Yeah, I think you brought it to plan commission too. Almost positive we did.
That we brought that to the
Yeah,
commission?
we had a discussion at plan commission about that.
Okay.
Because ultimately I said, the 10-foot separation would give you, area, a buffer zone, so that when you're doing any excavating or any building,
Right.
you'd be able to, you'd have
Right.
an area where you'd be able to protect the wetland.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it would be nice to have that in verbiage in our definition that says setbacks. We can have a general line that basically says, setbacks from highest, water line, X amount of feet, from any wetlands, or C1s, X amount of feet.
in no case shall the setback from
Correct.
an ordinary high water mark, a
Right.
wetland, an
Some
environmental
verbiage like-
corridor, a C1 zoning district, any of those things. In no case shall that setback be less than, and then the question is, what's the right number for that? And Jason pointed out today that different communities and the county, for instance, all have kind of their own number, what works for them. I know in one of the communities I work for in Waukesha County, we have no setback requirement, but we enforce 10 feet in site plan review. So the site plans have to be designed to show that 10-foot space. I think Vernon has 30 feet, did you say?
What do you think? No, Vernon is a township, we're reviewing it now, but you gotta remember, we were county zoning, we just got out of it, so that's more 75, but in most villages, villages and cities, like Muskego, they have none.
Okay.
So that's why when it came up at that time, we were talking about the 10-foot separation.
Right, so if you're comfortable with 10 feet, you know, I think that ensures that, like you said, if there's construction activity happening, you know, at the building, location, at least it's not construction treading on the environmental
Right,
area,
right.
so.
But I just would like to have that in that setbacks, you know.
In the
so that-
setback section.
So when we're looking, or anybody, I gotta keep in mind that so many people really will go on our website and look at our zoning, so,
Oh.
and we wanna have it, so that they're not looking at another section, or make it easy for them to look at that, so when they're designing something, they'll know exactly what their offset setbacks are in different zoning districts. So, that's one of the things that I'd like to see. Another thing, looking back at this, and I know that you, and I don't wanna be a kind of a jerk about this, but, and then we changed that drainage verbiage, where you put it in, I think you put it in the, erosion control, or adequate drainage requirements, we took that completely out of the zoning. Isn't there any way we can have that in that area, just so they know when they're doing a design? It could be, we could have it in our zoning that refers back to the section of where it is now. But at least when they're looking at this, our zoning, they're gonna know for sure that they have to have a 1-foot separation from privacy from groundwater. Because that is huge for us with our groundwater situation.
So a refer back, to chapter, 13,
Right,
Just a pointer back.
listed here in our zoning code.
right, correct. So now
That's-
at least we have it when they're looking at it, you know, it's right there. They're not gonna, because they're not gonna go back to that, chapter 13, typically.
Yeah.
They'll be looking at our zoning code, you know.
So you want the verbiage actually to be put into the zoning code, or you want the reference to get to chapter 13 and
As long as we have this,
consider that?
it's basically says drainage regulations, we took that out, but then underneath it is adequate drainage required. If that section can be in there, somewhere in our zoning code, but it can be referred back to its original, or its placement now, you know, in chapter 13. I wouldn't have a problem with it, but then it's readily available when you're looking, and when we're looking at it, because otherwise, you know, I call someone and say I want a Form A or a high groundwater, and they're gonna go, well, I looked through your whole zoning, I don't see any of it. Well, it's not in there, it's in chapter 13, but here, it just would be so much easier.
Okay. I'll make that change, Vince, and incorporate it as part of the highlighted changes that will come out after this meeting then.
So that would be referencing back to chapter 13?
Yeah,
It
some
will
level of verbiage
contain
around it.
some of the verbiage, the most pointed stuff, and then refer for further information to chapter 13.
Yeah, we just gotta be careful. We don't wanna necessarily duplicate our efforts, you know, so you don't wanna put too much, but something that's a quick high level, and then I'll point back to more detail in chapter 13.
We'll just have to remember that, cognizantly aware that we're referencing something that we're still awaiting the final structure and how it's gonna be put together, so
Right.
just be a follow-up
Yeah,
thing, I guess.
you're right, some sort of a tickler on that.
We just gotta make sure whatever we put in there isn't something that changes in the ultimate end result of the
Exactly.
13.
Yeah.
Right. So if we can get the setback that clearly defined, that'd be great. If we could do the verbiage in what height in the groundwater, and then just that section, the top section will be fine. Just as long as I'm talking, I might as well just keep talking for a little while. And when we went through, last time we talked about the area floor ratio, as we have it defined now, and I tried to explain it. I thought we had some discussion on that.
Yeah, we did.
And I just have a code section from our other zoning code, and this is pretty much how they're leaning as far as the floor area ratio. The calculation of the total floor area of the principal building allowed on a given lot expressed as a percentage ratio to the total area of the lot, i.e. a floor area ratio of 100% allows floor area equal to the total area of the lot. A floor area ratio of 50%, it's just an example, just to tell you what you can do. the percentage of area floor area for principal building is identified in each district. So, if you remember last time I told you about, you can have an area floor ratio, a huge house that was a ranch occupy X amount of feet, but a two-story can only occupy a small portion.
What page is that? I think I have notes on that one. What
Chapter
page?
page 13.
Under the definitions?
Definitions, yeah.
Because my notes say that we were striking part of that sentence to make more sense.
Right, and we did, I
The
think
wild,
we did that
yeah,
in the update.
we were striking the sentence based on last month's discussion, when you brought this up. To remove that weird verbiage so that it wasn't misleading where you, a two-story would have less.
Right, correct.
Yeah. That's what my notes tell. My pages are off from that.
Did I not, oh, I did not strike that sentence. I have it struck in my code.
Yeah, so you just missed it in the update that you sent out?
Okay, yep.
What else we got, Vince?
And then we had some discussion on that 10-foot rule for separation from the pool, from a house.
Yes.
You remember that? Were we gonna strike that, or what were we gonna do?
Where is that?
It's still in there. Let me see if I got a page in here. I think page 49.
When you call it page 49, what are you, my 49 does not line up.
That's the new one that she had,
Are you looking at the new?
this new
No,
one.
this 49 was from last month, 49 too.
Yeah, I think you're
Because my notes said page 49 from last month, so that would have been this book, but I think his version is different than the one I'm referencing.
Hey, you don't have to draft.
It's right
No.
above, it's right above
Yeah,
fences.
It's actually page 49, Russ.
But when he was calling it out, I was thinking it was this page 49.
Are you talking about all overhead?
No, it says pool shall not be nearer than 10 feet to any residence.
Section 6, Roman numeral 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a note here for that to be deleted. Is that not
Yep.
deleted?
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Correct.
Okay.
That was from the last month.
Did that not carry forward?
Mine's not deleted.
Oh,
Is yours? Anybody else's?
should be highlighted in green if it is. I feel like I can remember.
No, below this, we talked about that. Remember we talked about the 5-foot separation to underground wires, the 10-foot separation to overhead?
Yeah.
So the 5-foot's gone, but then a 10-foot pool shall not be nearer than 10 foot to any residence. I think we come to consensus that that could be stricken, right?
Correct.
Yep.
And then, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know why I
That's pretty good,
stupid
actually.
with that.
are you on, did you find the page there?
Yes, I did. Just making sure I made the other changes. I have notes on this page for. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that one.
And then, one other one, or maybe two other ones. We were talking about I think, the two-family, where there was a reduction in lot size. Because it was originally said 1 acre minimum. I know we had a lot of discussion on that, and then I think we put like a minimum per unit. I think we have it in here. Is that in the? Is that in the RP residential flex? unit?
Flex.
Yeah.
But then the
We
lot-
changed it from the 1 acre minimum to 15K per unit. That's what the discussion was last month.
Yeah, I believe so.
Right.
Thing that missed the draft update.
But it still says minimum of 1 acre.
I don't have the page on that one.
What page is that?
167.
167 and 168. Am I right about that? I think we talked about that.
You are.
I think
We did.
I think we.
I said 30,000 square feet is what we talked about.
We went back and forth, right?
You know, we ended up with 30,000 square feet as long as it can meet the sanitary requirements and setbacks from wells.
15,000 square feet
Per-
per unit
per
with
unit,
engineering
right.
support for services,
Correct.
was our notes.
Yep. But it was 30,000, the lot size could be 30,000 square feet. For a two-family, each has to be 15,000 and then accommodate private sanitary system.
Right, right.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really when I went through it, is what I caught the second time around. Yeah, that's what they're putting in right now. The information will come along.
So every piece is different.
Vince, you got more, or is that?
No, I was thinking I had one more, but I'll use my brain.
Think about it, yeah.
That's all I had on the list, but I just one of them popped up, but I'll think about it.
Mary, I only had one other thing that I saw that, I don't even know if it's anything or not, page 58, talking about residential parking. It looks like there's a gap in there, like a blank space, that it would make sense to put commercial for commercial vehicle, but I don't know if that was just a gap space that's left there, or if we're actually missing a word.
Oh, number 3.
Yeah, number 3, it talks about residential vehicles and RVs and stuff like that, or one similar, and then blank vehicle used in a business. I didn't know if that would be commercial vehicle, or if that's just a gap that was left there. That's a nuance at best, but
To fill in the blank. Create your own goal.
Wheel of Fortune.
Right.
Rocket vehicle, spaceship. You know, that'd be interesting.
Well, someday we'll have to take that on.
You have to address that in codes with me.
Yeah,
Launch pads, things like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Then
I,
you-
we'll be retired to the islands, Ed, and laughing at us when we have to.
you have to give us your forwarding number, in case we have any questions.
Obviously not a landline, some kind of sat phone.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think there is anything that goes in the email. I think it's just a
I mean, it
formatting
reads
issue.
correctly as it
Yeah.
goes through,
Just
but
a
it's
gap,
just. with
just
that
a
gap.
print issue or
Yeah.
a space issue.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
I know I had to leave a little bit early last month, I had to go get my son. I was just kind of wondering, like, I know it's a huge document to go through, a lot of changes and stuff, and just like, how far did you get? Did you guys have a certain spot where you left off, or?
We didn't start from front to back, we were going more so around the room for anybody's comments that they had found when they were going through themselves,
Sure.
correct?
Right.
We didn't like start from just page one and go through the whole thing. We just cycled around a couple people.
We didn't get too much further after you left. You didn't
Yeah,
miss
was
too
Tony
much.
talking about his comments yet?
No.
No, we were still on
Still on
Vince, right?
Vince?
Yeah, so there was a little bit more.
I remember we were trying to figure out if it was 102 or 120 for the flip numbers, that's just about the time I had to
Oh,
get
yeah,
out
yep.
here,
Okay.
for the one measurement, so.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was talking about. I mean, I just wanna go over that too, if you get a chance.
You wanna go back to that?
Oh,
You reminded him. Good job.
Sorry. That's no
Dang it.
Reminded me.
Yeah, so,
I think we got the, I think
Sorry,
we got
Ed.
the verbiage right, though.
yeah, it was supposed to be 120.
What page
Yeah, I
is
thought I
that?
saw the change in there.
Min versus required, right?
What page is that on?
41.
That's what I was trying to see.
Yeah, there was quite a few comments made after you left, actually. I have 2 pages of notes, put it that way.
It's all highlighted in green though, anything that was agreed to be changed. Everything that was modified is highlighted in the document we just received.
Vince, if you got, if you want to see it.
Yeah, 2 went another hour.
I
Just
think
over
that's
an hour
120,
after.
right?
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's
what
how much
yeah.
that's all.
Yeah, it was around 9 or whatever, and we were
Yeah, so
adjourned after
it's-
10.
Yeah, so the verbiage reads, basically it's between the, if it's under 120 feet, if that lot is under 120 feet, it's a difference, percentage difference of the actual size, lot size, say 100, divided by the minimum required lot size in that district. That's exactly what you set up. That's exactly what I wanted. It usually works. And then it'll give a percentage, and then it'll give us a percentage, and then multiply that by the number that's set.
Right.
Perfect. Yep, good, thank you.
One thing I wanted to mention is that the village attorneys are now copied in on the ordinance. And they asked what participation do you want from us on this? And I assume we want a full read, or at least a kind of a high points read, and I might just call them to really kind of hit on the high points of changes that are being made. And see what feedback we get, if any.
What's traditionally been done in the past when they've been changes? They've been involved in a detailed level or not?
In my experience, it's usually once the planning commission kicks it up to the village board,
Okay.
that's when the
That's when they
attorney
engage.
will start the review.
Which makes sense, yeah. They don't need to be in the blow by blow, but the potential finished product.
Mary, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, once we go through this process and we're pretty much set on it, so typically what do? Do you clean everything up, clean up the ordinance up, and then maybe put like asterisks on areas that were changed, so when we go through it, prior to us finalizing it, we have one more look at it? How do you typically do it?
I don't know that I can think of a better way to do it, except to keep what's being taken out in the document struck, and highlighting and bold new language that's in there. So really, the only next change that I would make is to accept all the changes and end up with a clean document.
But then that would take out the struck and all that, and the coloring and all that.
All that would go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't
So
do
there would
that
be-
until the board is done.
Yeah, you have to keep that in there for that final review, I guess.
Right,
So
right.
then that's what signals to people this area has changed.
Right.
I had a question. I had a marked up copy, reading all the way through it, which I failed to bring with me tonight. But I did kind of remember, where I left off. And again, I don't want to be the sticky booger, but I want to talk about it. If you go to page 196 into 197, I actually caught this at the very end, just reading through it. We talk about public hearings. And if you go down to, and I just want to be, if I'm wrong, I just want to be corrected. I'm making sure I'm reading it right. But if you go down to number 2, and we talk about public hearings, and it says, when the hearing involves a proposed change in a zoning district classification of any property or granting of conditional use, et cetera, of the notices posted in the vicinity, the village clerk shall mail notice of the public hearing to the owners of all lands within 300 feet. So my question is, when we did the proposed, and which was passed, was the rezoning of B4, would this have required that you send out letters to everyone within 300 feet?
Based on the verbiage, yeah.
No, we weren't changing the zoning of a particular property.
Oh, that way, I see.
We were changing the zoning text, the code text. And so
So
there
the
is
zoning didn't
no,
change, the property didn't change, it was behind the scenes, the verbiage around the zoning district did. So you're saying that's why it didn't trigger that. But with that being said, is this even something we've even followed to date?
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, you've been sending out the letters.
You would normally send them, or at least draft them and say, hey, this is the letter that goes out?
No, the notices you send out to all the residents who live within 300 feet of public hearing notices.
I've never been given that directive.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, I have yet to see it go out, but
I
that's
just
fine.
think there's a little bit of gray area. It says proposed change in a zoning district
Classification of the property, of a property. This is not, the change didn't occur to the property,
You just
it changed to the zoning
You changed
district.
the whole zone.
Right, it affects the entire village equally.
Yeah, so I think that covers that scenario, but it still brings to a good question to the table. If there is a zoning change to a parcel, are we, or should we appear to be mandating to ourselves that we need to be noticing those nearby properties? Hence, this extreme exteriors property. That had a public hearing, that was a rezone, so we should have noticed those properties right adjoining it, for what it's worth.
And nobody got letters?
No.
Holy moly.
So,
Yeah,
so
that's
this brought up a good,
procedure.
a good procedural issue, for sure.
300 feet of that mostly is Vernon. You typically send across
Yeah.
municipalities,
Yeah,
right?
with the zoning board.
Yeah.
That's the one just popped in my head.
Right.
Obviously.
Oh,
Oh,
that's,
actual
I was trying to
rezone.
think that was the only one we rezoned.
Because we did have a public hearing on it, there was a rezone there. I'm trying to think what
Well,
other one.
conditional use grants too.
Mhm.
Conditional use grants. You have to notify everybody within 300 feet of all the edges of the property.
It's 197, so it's.
96 and
it's under-
97, yeah.
It's under public hearings.
And it was in the old book too.
Yeah,
173.
it has been done in the past.
Okay, 197.
It has been done in the past, I've seen it.
197 was in Keels instead of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good enough.
A list of all properties within 300 feet attached to it,
Yeah.
all property owners that you're aware of anyway.
So it's another means besides just the newspaper,
Right.
basically, to notify the immediately impacted area.
So,
That makes sense.
Which the paragraph 3 covers a bunch of that.
Okay, so if you go down to item 3, on that same topic, starts out with failure of such notice to reach any, that last word should be conditional use.
Yeah, I see that. I see that.
Conditional us?
Us used.
It's gotta start happening immediately, though.
Correct. Yeah, because that's a Wisconsin statute, right?
Yeah. It's a clerk issue, but I'm guessing that Kelly was never trained in clerking on that particular topic.
You don't have every village ordinance memorized yet?
That's not even a village ordinance. That's what
That's a
sounds
state
But I had
statute.
talked to you about the extreme exteriors at one time for notification, and you had told me you were gonna take care of it. So I didn't really think too much of it.
I don't take care of any mailings. Those all have to go out on, village. I wouldn't direct
She's gonna give
my
notice,
postage and all
excuse me,
that.
exteriors, I think, that's what she was noticing.
Yeah, I draft the public hearing notices and send them to you for publication, and then I've always assumed that they were also being new.
Yeah, it makes sense, to have to go out on like the letterhead, the village letterhead and stuff.
Yeah.
Mary, I also saw you had a couple additional attachments tonight. You had the proposed sign, and then there was the other one for the adult-oriented. Are we gonna discuss those tonight too, or are those just for review for next meetings, or?
No, they are part of this review.
Yeah,
They're just, it's just that rather than show that many pages of struck out language,
yeah,
because the whole section's being replaced by a whole new set of language.
right,
I thought it'd be easier to put them as
Sure.
separate documents.
Sure.
But that is a part of what we're reviewing, because that piece sits in the middle of our zoning code.
So if I see something in one of those two, if this is just open discussion all at once for all of them? Or do you wanna do it piece by piece?
It's just all
there's one word left out that just kinda changed everything.
Oh.
I know that.
In that topic area.
Yeah,
What page are you looking at?
I'm zipping through it right now.
Oh.
It's, okay, under number 16, location of said adult-oriented businesses. It says under A, it says the business shall be located, within 500 feet of an existing, I believe that that's supposed to be, the business shall not be located. Because the way it reads right now, it says it shall be located within 500 feet of a residential dwelling or places of worship.
I mean,
or
if we require
schools,
all of
or-
those things, it'd be pretty hard to put one somewhere.
Yeah, I believe that the word not was left out of there.
Really close to a church, is that what you just said?
Yeah.
It says it has to be placed within 500 feet of a church, a school, a residence.
Yeah, that's definitely.
And another competing business.
Yeah, another competing business.
Shall not, yes. Shall not.
Keep a better eye on that.
And I'm done.
What page was that on?
Page 12.
You said 16, right?
Yeah, 16.
Yeah, that is, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You thought we were mad about a street light. I can only imagine not that argument.
So, Mary, I guess talking about this particular one, part 16 here, I noticed there was references in here to things back in like 1982, 1986. Is this still current?
It
This
is.
is the most current type
Yeah.
stuff? Okay.
Yeah, I still see it being added to codes,
Okay.
being updated at this time.
All right. Still have reference to these things called video cassette tapes and cassette recorders. I had to go back and look that up on Google, but I couldn't figure out what that was.
I'll have to have you over and we'll spin some 8-tracks on my Camaro.
That was the only thing that caught my eye immediately in here.
Vince, you wanna maybe let everybody know what you found out with the county as far as putting a zoning overlay on our
Oh, yeah,
GIS?
so, as I
Please.
said, I forgot about last meeting, but I did talk to, county, and they said as long as we provide them with a newly updated zoning classification of the village, a map, they would do an overlay on the GIS website for a maximum of $2,000.
Nice.
Oh, boy.
That's pretty reasonable. He said that's the high end, so I think that's pretty reasonable for them to do, and it would really be beneficial for the village.
Yeah, it's a great place to start, and then
Right.
start building some data layers in.
Right, and he said, they can continue to do as much as we want, with additional cost, but he said the savings would be for us to be as prepared as possible with what we wanna do.
Yeah.
But I think it would be perfect, in my opinion.
Thank you.
And then once we get that going, in conjunction with our new zoning code, when our new zoning code that's clarified,
Yeah.
because it was tough before, I think we're on our way.
Put a link to that map right in your signature on your email, huh?
Yeah.
Just click here.
So then you're just gonna let me know, cause I'll talk to him and let him know what we're gonna do, for the village decide.
Yeah, the day after, obviously, this gets
Yeah,
formally.
we get this done, we get the new map done.
Then that would be time to put it in play, instead of having to do it twice, and if an
Right.
update, you know.
Right.
Hopefully that blue font on the signs is tough to read.
It's all replacement language.
Yeah, it was just my eyes too.
Then one other little typo thing, I guess, page 195. Just happened to see it. That paragraph A at the top, it's got a sentence that's repeated in it. Citizen members shall be persons of recognized experience and qualifications. It says it 2 times. If they really mean it.
Yeah, I thought I cut that out.
Oh, I don't know if it's on that revised one.
I think it's cut off the second one.
I think I just happened to notice that as I was doing these updates.
Okay.
Let me double check.
So nice to put it in place.
We have a formatting issue here too in the sign code. 12, page 13. Are your pages numbered or no? Okay, we would be looking at section 16, 18, 15. So the 8, the sandwich signs, sandwich board signs, we go A, B, C, C, D, E.
Which, oh, yeah, I see that, okay. CC. We reviewed through the sign one before, hadn't we? I almost feel like we did.
It was quite early
Corrected
on,
it.
actually, in the process.
Yeah, I don't think you were part of that, to be honest, it was early.
Well, no, I was here for that. That was my first experience
We went through it again.
Oh, maybe the second time, yeah, the first time was real early on, it would've been,
Oh, okay.
you know,
Maybe
probably 2
that
years. Yeah.
That was the meeting where I asked myself what
Well, you got yourself
my
into.
life choices, yeah.
And he's still here.
Next month, so.
He ran for trustee after that.
He went all in.
Mary, I looked through it, I didn't really have anything of concern.
You know, updating a zoning code is almost never perfect. You'll adopt it, or eventually it will get adopted, and in the year that follows, you're going to find find
Sure.
little snafus that,
Stuff that was missed.
that will have to be addressed. You hope that they aren't, impactful. That's what I think we're guarding against by reading through it. But there will be some cross-references that are off. There'll be some things that just won't comport. Expect that for a period of time after you adopt it and plan to take up periodic housekeeping changes like that.
Yeah, it's inevitable, it happens all the time.
So deep, there are so many changes
No
and
matter what
strikeout
you do, no
areas,
matter how
and
you
a couple hundred
practice it.
pages, it's just the nature of the beast, so.
Yeah.
What's the original? How many? Yeah, there's 4 revisions.
And so, what were we thinking? Target?
That's okay, we got a built-in scapegoat for a couple of years now. I don't care, did that.
And dropping Easter eggs for us to find later.
That kid.
I don't know what Ed was thinking when he said that.
I know, it's, look, right here, it says, Ed said this.
Yeah. Mary,
Early
one
on.
other question. Yeah, I don't know where it is, and it just came to my head. Remember we talked about the horses of 3 acres and then the 1 additional acre, because it was kind of weird. Do we clarify that? Is there,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
been
it was
updated.
changed. Definitions, wasn't it?
Page 118, 1 for 3 acres and 1 acre for each, 1 horse for each acre after,
okay, good.
is what we talked about last month.
Yeah.
5 acres, 3 horses.
Most are only really training horses.
Good, perfect, good. Thank you.
Which is like,
17 horses on 20 acres.
Yeah.
One for 3. 17.
Everybody, you're starting to do math in public.
I know, but it just seems like it might get a little crowded.
When you
Well,
scale
all
it
depends
back-
though, so if it's a private stable, it's different, but if they're using it for boarding, then it would likely, all likely would be under conditional use, and then you'd have to have a waste management plan, so the bigger establishments would be scrutinized.
A little bit heavier, yeah.
And then for the signs one, I'm assuming, because I don't see any strikeouts or changes, was that like all new, or is that just the old one separated and cleaned up already?
No, it's an entirely new code.
It
So
is.
there was a Act 67 that was passed where included in there was some discussion about the fact that you can no longer regulate signs by their content,
Yeah.
with very few exceptions. Some of them having to do with off-site, can't call attention to, you can prohibit signs that call attention to service or business that's no longer located on the property or not located on the property. You can prohibit signs that mimic traffic signals
Sure.
or cause a safety issue. Other than that, you can't regulate by content. And everybody's sign codes up to now have been written based on content. This type of sign, you can't have a real estate for sale sign except thus and so. You can't have a construction project identification sign except thus and so. So now sign codes are written that specifically permit a certain number a certain size, a certain setback
Sure.
by zoning district.
Okay.
So,
And did we like take this, like, is this like a boilerplate from somewhere else we got it from?
it is. I talked to Mike Schober, or John Schober about it, and explained to him that I had written this ordinance for the village of Pewaukee after that act was passed.
Okay.
And I talked to him about the village attorney who supervised and oversaw the transition in that community. John was satisfied that Mark Blum had reviewed it, and he deferred to his satisfaction on it, so.
Okay. I was gonna say, 'cause if you wrote all this from scratch, like kudos to you. That's a
I
lot.
did at one point,
Oh,
yeah.
that's a lot.
It was a big, big undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 32 pages, but there's a lot in there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of,
Who'd have thought?
So I think
Like
that
72
is-
pages.
yeah.
Well,
We talked first about Act 67 back in May of 2018, so this probably started right after that, 'cause that's when we started the recodification discussion. So it looks like July was our first meeting, talked about it.
Really?
I just looked back. Jeez, 2.5 years. My, how time flies. And Ed, you stayed here for the whole thing almost.
It does.
Several times through.
A couple of these days.
Yeah, your initials should be next to all of these probably on this book.
Donate the old ones to the archives?
Did you hear they're running out of storage? Moving on. Excuse me.
oh, Kelly.
All good.
So just for the adult oriented thing, is that gonna go back into this, or did we strike that out and that's gonna become its own section, or?
Well, that stays in the zoning.
It stays in, it's just been revised,
Yeah.
okay.
Legally, we're obligated to have it in the code.
Yeah, it seems pretty specific, I mean, it's,
It is,
It's one of those spots you cannot strike.
yeah, I cross-referenced our update with, the city of New Berlin's language.
okay. Sure.
last sentence, failure to remove such illegal sign shall authorize the village to remove the sign at the expense, right now it says expanse. Ha.
You got some pretty good eyes over there, if you can see that. I was kinda wondering why you didn't zoom out a little bit or something.
Just like,
You like
writing my.
showing off that you don't need cheaters, is that what's going on there?
Right. And I also read things backwards.
Well, I had a LASIK, and, I was pretty fortunate that I don't need cheaters, so.
I mean, I'm not dyslexic, I read documents from the rear to the front, and then go from the front to the rear again, but it's an engineering thing, I don't know.
I can't find that
Okay,
section you were referring to.
So it's, section 16, illegal signs.
16,
Under the sign code.
16,
under the sign code. so it's-
18.
Just, oh, you know what, that's the old one, I went too far. That was under the old one, not the new one, my apologies. I've been sitting here the last 10 minutes reading the old.
You're gonna find probably a couple things then.
You're gonna stay 10 minutes.
That's all you found?
Give 'em time.
There's a note of reference in the sign code here. It's a little bit ambiguous, I think, I don't know, it's on, where it talks about on property zone B1, it's like a dash B4, meaning B1 through B4, I assume that means. But it's probably not real clear, maybe you should list each of the B1, B2, B3, B4. It's every place where,
Yeah.
you know, it's just, it's not real clear, I don't, someone
I know
could
what
say.
you're talking about, I just haven't found it here, that's there. Yeah.
And I read past it a couple times, and as I get further into it, I'm like, okay, does it really mean all four of those? I think it does, but
Yep.
someone could
How,
construe that as something different, maybe.
Mhm.
I was looking at the electronic messaging sign one, and the sign, the section 2 there, it just made me think of the sign on, 164 by that church. Have you seen that? That thing is so bright, you can see it from miles away. It looks like the sky's lighting up as you're coming up, like south of
Big Waukesha?
Talking about the Y, the Fox River Church?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I think part of it is because of how large it is and how tall it is.
Oh,
It
yeah.
stands out
It is
pretty
just-
high. If it was more towards the ground, I don't think it would
Yeah.
illuminate as much, but, yeah, that thing is pretty crazy.
Yeah, but we, just in ours, that, you know, the amount of lumens provided shall not create glare or visual distractions. Yeah. So, but, I mean, I was thinking about that the other day, I'm like, oh my God, we're driving home and I'm like probably 2 miles away from it, and I'm like, what is that huge light over that hill there? That's their sign.
Yeah.
With the sign, I can see like the first half is a different color font, and then like the second half is in black font.
Right.
Are those aren't just, is that all together from one, it's supposed to be one document, it's just the font and colors are different, or is it?
I've used blue throughout the whole code
Yeah,
to represent new
the new,
replacement language.
okay.
And
The bottom one is the existing?
the bottom one is the existing. I didn't X it out because I wanted you guys to be able to cross-reference
Okay.
any questions you had.
Okay.
So I wanted it
Or to forget about that it was two separate things and go back and start
to, you know, or that.
surfing through the.
Right, if it had been Xed out, I could have saved you those comments.
Spend it on more life, Mary, so don't worry about it.
I'm looking for something right now in the sign code. I don't know why it triggered my thought on this, but sign codes can be different than a zoning code. Sign regulations can be different than standard zoning regulations in that you can decide to allow all existing signs to become legal non-conforming, but you don't have to. You can say that within a certain period of time, all existing signs must be brought into conformance with this ordinance. And put kind of a sunset on the existing signs.
Almost being grandfathered in.
Yeah, and you can really kind of manage that, you know, any way you want. By zoning district, for instance, if you don't want to impact, you know, the business and industries, or you don't want to impact residential. So that's just a thought. It's not in there. Without it, signs become legal non-conforming. So they're allowed to continue as is.
Yeah.
That was out for adjourning.
Literacy.
If nobody else has any changes, the question is, are you prepared to make a recommendation to the village board for review and consideration at their level and possibly ultimate approval of the new zoning?
I think so. I think we've cut this thing pretty good over the last 2.5 years. It's time somebody else gives them a chance.
Right, I think it is
Another
time
set of
for a
eyes.
fresh set
Unfortunately,
of
there's
eyes.
3 of us that are gonna be the same set of eyes, but yeah,
Right.
still part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's fine, it gets another set of eyes and ears on it, and could make some tweaks out of it. We'll see.
Give somebody else a chance to look it over. I'll
Yeah,
make that motion.
Mary did a great job on it.
Yes, very much.
And like she said, there's always gonna be things you're gonna come across.
Yeah, it'll never be 100% perfect, find little typos or grammar issues or like I said, reference points.
Just things like we don't remember what we were thinking at that time.
I hope it doesn't come to that.
It will.
It will.
That's why I pull the
Everything
egg card.
Yeah, we pull the egg card in. He's sailing the Caribbean now, this was his idea.
Good luck.
One final strikeout, you should be the one to motion it on up to the.
There you go, you wanna second that? You made the motion.
I'll second it.
Ed's last motion.
I think we've discussed it almost to death over the last
And,
2.5 years, but does anybody else have anything? I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, not yet.
Oh, look at him
Not yet, I
jumping.
got one other
Look at him
thing.
jumping.
I'm going to,
Pause that motion.
pause that and, we'd like to present, it was a little plaque here.
Oh, jeez. I gotta find room to vote for that or what?
Yeah.
In recognition of your 800 years of service with the village, we'd just like to say thank you. Wish you all tremendous luck and success on your future endeavor.
And you're sailing.
Yeah, appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
Appreciate it, it's been fun. Most of the time.
I think it's gonna be a lot more fun what you're planning on doing.
Yeah.
Natalie's gonna miss the meetings, I know.
Pretty sure we're all jealous.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Like I said, the plant commission now is probably better than it's been in all the years I've been here. Got the best group of people that pay attention to things and understand what's gotta happen. So I think the village is in really good shape going forward. There'll be a lot of changes in the future, I'm sure.
Thank you. I hope,
Excited to come back and see him someday.
I think it's just been great working with you. It's,
You're
always
welcome.
so nice to have a commissioner who's that engaged and competent, so.
Wealth of knowledge, that's where we're gonna miss that for sure. You know, brought a lot of history and knowledge to the table.
It's good to have fresh minds too.
That's true.
Now can I make a motion to adjourn?
yes, sir.
You just can't wait. He's like, I'm gonna do it.
Don't blame them.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned.
I guess that makes you the senior member, or Paul?
It's really close between you two, right? How many years you guys got?
More than you.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, 20,
When he's here before too long, you don't see the new kid on the block.
well, maybe not that.
Yeah. Bill, you want to take a picture with your EMT with Mickey? Sure. I want to take a picture.
I saw when my boss was
You take your mask down?
You know, I think it's
Drop your mask.